Hi, I'm Jerry Kroth. I just finished writing a book called Ground Zero, Jerusalem, Holy War, and Collective Insanity. I'm a professor of psychology, and I've always been interested in all the insane forces that sort of swirl around this area of the world, and I wanted to write a book on that subject. So what you're looking at there is the very center of Jerusalem, the old part of the city, and there in the center is the Dome of the Rock, which is the place where Muhammad left and went on his heavenly journey. To the right is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the third holiest site in all of Islam, and on the left is the Jewish Wailing Wall. Now this 35-acre site is probably the most volatile area on earth, where many crazy factions get together and have claims and counterclaims. The most explosive real estate on earth. Now, collective insanity is a concept that needs to be talked about just briefly. You can have an insane leader who's paranoid, schizophrenic, pre-psychotic, borderline. Those were all terms used with Hitler. But Jung alerted us to the fact that war is a psychic epidemic. It's like collective insanity is like an infectious disease. It spreads. Masses of people become inflamed by their furor or their leader's craziness. They fuse with their leader, and it is at that time that mass movements, individuals lose their identity and meld into the masses, and great massacres occur here. In this book, I wanted to look at 4 pockets of insanity that deal with this area, the Temple Mount, or Haram al-Sharif, that 35 acres. Fundamentalism, I call them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Fundamentalism, Messianism, Evangelism, territoriality. We won't have time to go into the last one, but this is just an introduction. So, when you talk about fundamentalism, first of all, we have a pie chart of Islam, 1.5 billion Muslims. We're not talking about these people. We're not even talking about fundamentalist Islamists. We're talking about a sub sliver of this population that has a very strange view of the world. So, Christians have their idea of the end times. It's called eschatology. Well, even though this is not in the Quran, it is written of in Islamic mythology and literature. And there are people who believe in the end of days translated into the Islamic mythology. So in this scenario, an evil figure who's very charismatic, is Jewish, appears, and he's called the Dajjal. And a great war ensues and envelops much of the world, and it's a war against the Jews, or with the Jews participating. Finally, this war is resolved by the arrival of the Redeemer, similar to Christ, except that the Redeemer's name is the Mahdi. The Mahdi comes through the eastern gates of that Temple Mount that you saw, and comes to rule over Jerusalem. Now, Jesus Christ also is the Mahdi's assistant, and his job is to destroy Christianity. Ahmadinejad and Nasrallah, who's the head of Hezbollah, they deeply believe in this set of circumstances. Now, we have another pocket of craziness, and that is Messianism. Now, when we talk about Messianism and the Messiah, the Jewish Messiah, we're not talking about all Jews, or after all, 45% of the Israeli people do not believe in God. So, and only 15% consider themselves religious, 8% are deeply religious, and in that small sliver, we have the extremely fanatically religious Messianists who see their end of days in their own way. For example, in their way in which the world comes to this conflagration, the first step is that Israel is created as a state and the period of exile ends. Well, that happened in 1947, which means that excited these people because they felt that, prophecy is about ready to unfold. So the next step in Jewish prophecy is the rebuilding of the temple, the third temple, right on that site. In fact, a lot of these radicals feel that the temple should be built right where the Dome of the Rock is. If the Dome of the Rock has to be destroyed. Now, if the Dome of the Rock is destroyed, or the Al-Aqsa Mosque is destroyed, many military strategists have said this will be the beginning of World War III. Okay? Now, these are people here who have very strong prophetic ideas about Jewish messianism. But a red cow has to be born, who will then be sacrificed so that all the Jewish people in the world will be cleansed. And in their view, there's a great war that is to erupt. It's called the war between Gog and Magog. And finally, the true Messiah will arrive and, again, rule the earth from that 35-acre site. There's another group, Evangelism, American and worldwide evangelism. We're not talking about all Christians. There are 2.1 billion Christians, a billion Catholics, who do not believe in the rapture, the tribulation, the end of the world, or any of that stuff. Evangelicals tend to believe more in these things. But that's a smaller and smaller group of people. All right? So we're not talking about all Christians or even all fundamentalist Christians here. We're talking about a certain variety of patient that we want to admit to our virtual asylum. And these are people who believe in the revelation, the tribulation, the rapture. This is the whole ideology of the end of times, which talking about the arrival of the Antichrist, the beast 666, and of course what everyone is looking forward to, Armageddon. Now, there are a lot of people who believe these things who are not getting into our asylum. We have hundreds of, in fact millions of people who have bought into this idea about the end of the world. There are books, televangelists broadcasting all the time on television throughout the world, not just in our country. These are some of them. The Left Behind series talks about how Armageddon will come and those who have accepted Jesus will be raptured to heaven before these tribulations happen. 66 million people bought those CDs and books. 40% of Americans believe in the end times. That's a lot of people. 18 million Americans actually believe the end of the world will come in their lifetime. So it's in this group that we're going to find our patients. But just because you believe that doesn't make you crazy. Here's what makes you crazy, okay? You have to have all of these symptoms to come into my virtual asylum that I've created in this book. First, you have to believe the end times will occur in your lifetime, that the rapture will take the lives of Jews who have not accepted Jesus. That's a bit of an anti-Semitic point of view. You have to believe in Armageddon. And the most important thing is that you want to be part of prophecy. So you want to contribute money to aid and abet the fanatics who want to destroy the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque so that the temple can be rebuilt. If the temple is rebuilt, then Armageddon will happen, and then Jesus will come, and then you'll be raptured. So the temple has to be built, which means that those structures that you saw in the first part of this have to be destroyed. Not everybody goes along with that, but some people do. And some people are willing to contribute to become so-called part of prophecy. So how many people worldwide would fit that description? And the estimate is about 1.2 million people would really contribute to the destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock and precipitate World War III. Now, when we take all of our four forces, and I've only described three here, and we put them together, there are four major crazinesses, pockets of craziness, that are all focused in on this 35-acre site in Jerusalem. Okay? Now, if we were to add up all the inmates that we've sort of described in this book that I'm very briefly covering here, it comes out to about 2.5 million fanatic, rabidly delusional individuals who are in effect prepared for violence, anticipating violence, and in fact looking forward to violence. So in this book I have a chapter about sanity. What would happen if we took all those 2.5 million people and removed them from the scene? Is it possible that peace could be made without these interest groups? After all, the American evangelists are extremely right-wing, extremely opposed to any reconciliation with Palestinians or any giving up of any of the holy sacred territories whatsoever. So if we removed these people, just in fantasy, it's possible that peace could be achieved. So if there were a sanity option where reason and compromise, give and take, occurred, where everybody gets a little something and everybody gives up a little something, well, the disposition of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock are very, very crucial to this. They have to be returned to Muslim, not just administration, Muslim sovereignty. Okay? If that ever occurred, it would have to imply that somehow a new state of Palestine or East Jerusalem took over that section of the Temple Mount, which encloses the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And then a section of that area could be given to Israel as part of its sovereign territory, where they can build their third temple. So if that actually occurred, and this was partitioned and subdivided so that both sides have a sovereign piece of that territory, peace could possibly be achieved. Throughout the Arab world, there would be jubilation. They would say Jerusalem has been liberated and Al-Aqsa is ours, and the sanctuary of their holy prophet is now Muslim. You don't have to apply to Israel to get a visa to go and make a Hajj in the Al-Aqsa Mosque like you do today. So that is one way to think about peace, and it's a different way. But the final chapter of this book recognizes that our inmates are still out and about, agitating in Washington and in Tehran and everywhere for the Mahdi, for the arrival of Christ, for the rapture, for the tribulation, and they're not off the streets. So when we talk about the last chapter, we talk about what happens if sanity and reason fail. And here we really look at the weapons of war. And if you take Israel and you superimpose it on a map of California, you just realize how small this area of the world is. This is the size of a large county in California, okay? Except that there are 5 navies that are cruising, opposing navies, cruising off the coast of Big Sur. There are 2,000 military aircraft from all of these nations, Jordan, Syria, Egypt, and Israel itself, that are flying around. There are 2 million soldiers arrayed inside and outside of County Israel here. There are 50,000 missiles and anti-missile missiles pointed at each other in this region of the world. There are 5,000 tanks on the inside and on the outside of County Israel. There are, and our media doesn't discuss this much, 200 nuclear weapons ready to go. There's also sarin, phosgene, cyanide, anthrax, foot and mouth disease, plague, and ricin are packed in, plus mustard gas, packed into artillery shells and ready to be fired if things get out of hand on both sides. Okay? This is the most heavily weaponized area on Earth. Okay? And we think that it's under control. Blowing up the Dome of the Rock and attacking the Al-Aqsa Mosque is the most likely trigger event to start World War III. Okay? It's been attempted over 24 times, usually by the people that we're describing in this book. Okay? And it can set off a chain reaction of collective insanity and collective hysteria. So I would like to end this little short introduction to this book by quoting Carl Jung.
We need more understanding of human nature, because the only real danger that exists is man himself. He is the great danger, and we are pitifully unaware of it. We know nothing of man, far too little. His psyche should be studied because we are the origin of all coming evil.
Thank you for watching.